The Profit Constructors presents Construction Junction, the junction between accounting and construction. Please welcome our host, Tonya Schulte.
Welcome back to the Construction Junction podcast. My name is Tonya Schulte, and I have here with me today Brian. Brian, how do you say your last name? Is it Cancian?
It is Cancian.
Awesome, with Foundation Software. Brian, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you being here. So, for those of our listeners who don't really know what Foundation is, or maybe haven't heard of Foundation, and honestly, I'm quite surprised the number of construction companies that are out there in the world trying to do accounting, struggling through various different softwares, and haven't ever heard of Foundation. So tell us a little bit about Foundation. How did it come to be?
How did Foundation come to be? Way back when, 1984, 85, the founder of the company, Fred Odie, was working for a local engineering firm here in the Cleveland suburban area. And they decided they needed something better than what they were using, right? And the system was originally written on the Wang mini computer system, and somehow Fred was able to come away with the basis of that tool that was built for them, and created a DOS-based accounting system called Foundation Accounting Software. And from there, it just grew. Our original first employee is still with us today. We've gone through a lot of growth, a lot of changes, but just continually developing over time. In the early 2000s, we migrated over to the Windows-based application that's on the market today, and added a lot of other products along the line. About 16, 17 years ago, we took our core strength in the system, the payroll module, and parsed that out and now offer a payroll service specifically for contractors. And that is good whether you're using Foundation or any other accounting system. It's not necessarily needing to be used just with Foundation. So we have many clients in the payroll service that don't even use our Foundation software, which is great. Then since 2020 or so, we've acquired a couple estimating packages. That's Estimating Edge and McCormick Estimating. We acquired a company called Harness Safety and was able to rebrand that into our HQ suite of products. So that's a whole homegrown set of tools for mobile project management, human resource management. There's some executive reporting, like I said, the safety piece, and then project management, of course, if I said that. And then most recently, we acquired About Time Technologies out in Utah and their flagship product, WorkMax, which gives us a really powerful field data collection tool and allows us to do timekeeping and various forms, et cetera, in the field, and have that all mesh with the back office operations. So really created a strong set of tools for the entire back office of a contractor.
I love that. So you guys started out really going after that accounting workflow, but over time you've added on to make it, like you said, really a great suite for the whole back office.
And in hindsight, naming the company after the product or the product after the company, it's kind of a killer because now we have to market Foundation software, but it's not just Foundation software, it's all of these other products as well. So, Foundation is the product versus Foundation is the company. It's an important distinction.
Yeah. Well, and having gone through a company-wide rebrand over here, just don't even try it. It's
nope, not happening.
Ridiculous.
Well, it's like acquiring McCormick Estimating. If we tried to rebrand that, you would lose such the market recognition because it's one of the foremost estimating packages in the mechanical, electrical, plumbing industry. And why would we do that? That would be silly. So yeah, no rebranding.
Yeah, I love it. What kind of sets Foundation software apart from other accounting softwares that are out there?
When you look at what you're buying, it's very easy to look at a piece of software and say, does it do this? Does it do that? Does it do this? Does it do that? Right? Is it going to do everything you need? And just analyzing it from that perspective, it's that's one piece of it, right? What sets us apart is when you start looking at not only the product, but you start looking at also the company, right? You look at the retention, you look at the customer service, the response times, and just the entire culture of the organization. Um, we have many employees who have been here, I don't know, many, but quite a few, um, that were either here when I started back in '97 or came in shortly thereafter. Definitely, people with 20 plus years. Like I said, our original developer that Fred Odie brought on, to get this really moving forward, she's still here today. Um, and I think that says a lot when you have employees like that stick around and really focus on just building the best company possible. So um, it is our company, our culture. If you come to our user conference, it's just an amazing experience. We deal on the internal. This is probably the same at any company, right? You deal day to day with the problems. People don't call because they're happy. They call because they're having trouble doing something, or that they're not happy with this or not happy with that, and you get bogged down in that day to day. And our user conference was down in Nashville in April. We had over 750 people attend, plus various vendors in our vendor pavilion. I think we had 75 employees. So, easily 1,000 people at this event. And the feedback that you get, the experience that everybody has, and I know it's Nashville, it's easy to be happy, but just the event and how well it was put on and how well received all of our information was, all of our people, and the customer feedback, it kind of regrounds you to why you do what you do here when you're in the office every day.
I love that. And especially because who you guys are serving is the same industry that our team serves.
Right.
And, construction accounting is where I've built my entire career. I was telling him is when you and I were chatting before this episode, I started doing construction accounting in 1997. I was taking a community college course, Accounting 101 in 1997, but I also went to work for an architect and home builder and started doing his accounts payable, and then just sort of worked my way up from there.
Yeah.
But so I've spent my entire career serving that industry. And one of the things I think is fascinating about this industry as a whole, we've talked about it here on the podcast before, they're very straightforward.
Very.
You get what you get. And so if they're telling you that they like your software, they mean it. If they didn't like your software, they would be telling you otherwise.
Absolutely. And it's not to say that those who like it don't also have negative things to say. I mean, there's, hey, we really need it to do something, or, this just isn't, it's not quite right. And we listen to that and we try to incorporate a lot of that into the direction that the product takes.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about kind of what does it look like when a client reaches out to you guys and says, hey, I want to know more about Foundation. Kind of what are you guys telling them about why they should choose Foundation as their accounting software?
Yeah, first and foremost, the experience here, everybody or everything that is involved in the process, from sales and marketing through the onboarding, implementation, support, and so on, it is all contained in-house. We do not have resellers. We don't have consulting firms that sell or consult on this. I mean, I'm sure there are companies out there that do consult on it, but it's not run through us, and there are plenty of people who know a lot about it. That's great. And some of my best implementations happened with a very up-to-date CPA, somebody who is involved with the company that can be more local, can be a high, more frequent point of contact. They take the information through these training sessions and they make sure that things are getting done as necessary. But so it's not to say that those don't exist, but we manage everything in-house so that we can really control the customer experience. So, if somebody's raising their hand, whether it be from a mailing, an emailing, a webinar that is put on, a referral, they will come right into our sales staff for quick qualification. If it seems like it needs a fit, they'll go right into our sales department. They'll generally schedule an online demo. That could be one and done. It could be a couple of different ones depending on the complexity of the client's needs. I think our sales team is pretty diligent at really looking at what these people are asking for. And if it's not a good fit, nobody's trying to force it, right? There are different things you can do. I mean, that's not how it's designed to work, but we can do this and it will work.
Right.
And yeah, you pursue those. But when it's just, yeah, we do not do what you're looking to do, it's not a good fit. They'll tell
Talk
them so.
about that. Let me ask you about that. Sorry to interrupt, but let me just ask
Yeah.
you really quickly. Who do you guys describe as your ideal client? Who is it a great fit for?
Yeah, we are designed really for a labor intensive contractor. If you are a straight general contractor, basically managing the paper side of the business and subbing out everything, most likely not a great fit. If the bulk of your jobs are residential, high volume, low duration, generally not a good fit. We're going to deal with the specialty subcontractor, probably minimum of 3 to 5 million in revenue.
Mhm.
Ideally, 20 to 25 employees out in the field, maybe less, it depends. But a lot of these companies coming to us are coming from QuickBooks or maybe another construction specific application that just isn't meeting their needs. Our strength is truly in the payroll processing. As I mentioned, we started a whole payroll processing company,
Yeah.
but the ability to handle multi-state, multi-union, if you're doing any prevailing wage, Davis-Bacon projects, right? The ability to handle those various wage rates, the additional fringe benefits that are required to be paid to those employees while working on those jobs under certain trades or skills that determine different rates, different fringes, and so on. Not only can we handle all that, but then the reporting side to be able to, for lack of a better term, I guess, push a button and get a certified payroll report for that week without having to gather all sorts of data to generate those union reports, the workers' comp reports, all of the different things that are necessary. So that's a huge piece. Most companies can do payables and receivables. It's pretty simple. The payroll is what really sets it apart.
I love that. How do you guys handle like job costing and project management? I know you said you do also even have a separate component, something else that you guys acquired that handles more of that project management side, but how does that all fit together and how is that happening so that you mentioned reporting, and one of the things that our team is always looking for is like, can we do WIP reporting? What type of job costs can we get from Foundation? Let's talk about that.
So I spent the better part of my career here with Foundation in the consulting realm. So going out to clients post-implementation, whether it be 6 months, a year, 10 years after, whether it's employee turnover or just, hey, we bought this software to do a certain thing. And like most companies, you get it up and running and you forget about all the other stuff that you wanted and you keep using your spreadsheets and you spend all this time before someone's just like, why are we doing this? So that's where I spent most of my time. So when it comes to job costing, right, everything that you do in the software, from entering an invoice to putting in time cards, billing, right, all of that flows into the project. So it's not only hitting the ledger for the accounting side, but it also flows through to job costing. Everything that you do requires, the job, the cost code, the cost class, or maybe a phase if you add that level in. So it's a significant amount of reporting that's required. And it's interesting because you talk to QuickBooks users and they're not accustomed to needing all of that data. And they're like, well, hey, why can't I just download my credit card statement and have it in here? I'm like, well, because it's really a lot more complicated than that. You got 100 transactions and you got 100 different jobs it could go to. And within that, different codes it can go to. And with that, even, is it equipment? Is it material? So it requires a much more granular level of detail to get that in, to get accurate reporting compared to your budget. So absolutely, job costing is the entire backbone of the software, for sure. Yes, financials are good. You got to get them. But I don't care if your books, show that you're making money. If you don't know how you're making money on your jobs and where you could be making more, you're missing the boat. So that's definitely an important piece. Project management side, again, we have flexible job cost reporting. You can generate, various reports. You can create reports that are not canned out of the box. and the system has some project management capability there. A lot of companies though are trying to keep some of these pieces of the company in their own silos, which is interesting because 10 years ago we were trying to look for something, everything to be in one place, something that does it all. We want everybody in one system. And now it's like, yeah, I don't know if I want my project managers in my accounting system.
Right.
And regardless, I mean, even if they are, it's completely secure. You can define users with roles and permissions, keep them out of the areas they're not supposed to be into. You can literally get it down to the report level, like, hey, these are the reports the guy can run.
Yes.
And because he is the project manager on the job, these are the jobs that he's able to see. So it is really easy to do, but still some people are like, yeah, just like, hey, I don't really want to do this online. I don't want my books out on the intranets, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah, it's really not how it is, but that's okay. You think we can run. So yeah, so that's it. But that's why we did develop the standalone project management piece, which does share information back and forth with the accounting piece. But it just kind of keeps the project management team out of the accounting software.
Like that. What all is included in that project management package? What types of project management things can they do over there?
Yeah, I mean, from RFCs, RFIs, submittal packages, things like that, getting change orders, put together and pushed over to the accounting system. There's reporting that comes through with it.
Nice.
I'm trying to think of some of the other details. It's probably one of the areas I had the least experience in because that was rolled out, sort of as I was getting out of the hands-on piece. Yeah. But that's why we have a sales team.
Yeah, and they know more about it.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about, because you've been doing this for quite some time now, Brian, and you were just mentioning, 10 years ago, everybody was like, oh, I don't like this, that, you're forcing me to buy this and do this, and, how are they going to integrate? Will they talk and sync? Now then it's becoming a little bit different, where people started to recognize, oh, but if I do give people access to my accounting software, what are the permissions that I can hand out? And maybe I don't want seeing some information. So you mentioned that. What are some other trends that you're kind of seeing in terms of construction technology and how that's playing into choices that your customers are making right now?
Yeah, I think AI, obviously it's the buzzword, right? Everybody wants to use the latest and greatest.
Right.
I think it's very exciting, but you got to really look at what's the practical application. Like, you don't need it for something, right? It's like, hey, I don't have to go buy, a fancy BMW when I really just have to go to the store once a day and my little beater will work just fine, right? I mean, what do you need and how fancy do you need to get? So I think that AI is a big, right? And in this space so far, what I have seen is accounts payable automation. That's a big one, right? Because it's a very labor intensive portion of what people do in the back office. And a lot of it is just monotonous. I got to read an invoice. I've got to key the same information in over and over, right? Vendor, date, invoice number, amount, so on and so forth. That's all stuff that can be very easily done. But the coding of the invoice to the proper job cost code class, the splits and things like that, it's a little bit different, right? So tools like that, where they can receive the invoices in, have a lot of that information already populated, have workflows already embedded to get those invoices in front of the right people to finish coding.
Yep. Have
someone else be able to review everything prior to pushing it right into their accounting system. That's a big trend. A little more, less kind of specific, just general niche applications that do small pieces. These pieces of software that don't want to be an entire accounting system, right? Nobody wants to get into payroll. And if you're thinking about it, I highly discourage it. It's horrible. It's a horrible thing.
Payroll, like you do with
absolutely. Yeah. The code behind it and the upkeep to stay current with, all of the local and state taxes and just all of that it's a nightmare. But yeah, that's it. But hey, we have a very specialized billing application, and it's for this particular industry that tends to do things a little bit differently. Like, we can't possibly do all of that. We would spend countless years developing something that's, really relevant to such a small portion of our target market.
Right.
So these small applications come along that do it, and they do it really, really well. And they need to share that accounting information with, the company's ERP system, because why should I have to re-enter an invoice that I already did over here? Like, you already know who it is? Can't you kind of talk together? And that's kind of a very current trend, and that's what I'm dealing with, pretty much on the day to day here.
I love that. So tell us more about that. It's actually one of the things that I have been shouting from the rooftops since we started the Profit Constructors about 8.5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
We decided at that time, I was laughing a little bit when you were saying, I don't want all my information in the internet. That's a little late for that.
Right.
That
Right.
ship has sailed, right?
Probably shouldn't have signed up for Facebook, should you? No,
Right.
probably not.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe you should never do your banking online, or even if
Oh,
you
right.
go to the bank, right? At all,
Right.
right?
It's true.
But I think that one of the things that I've been saying for quite some time is, as I've seen the evolution of construction accounting all the way from back in the day when we had the big stamps, where they were this big for all the coding to be
Yeah.
incorporated
Yep.
on, you know, uh, one of the things that I think is really amazing about being able to have a lot more of cloud-based softwares and a lot of more software interactions is that you can do that type of thing. You
Yeah.
can take an ERP software and also integrate something smaller that is specific to your needs, and make those two things work together really well. So what types of apps do you guys work with, and kind of what are some of the integrations that you guys have?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, AP automation is a big one.
Yeah.
That is, and these are ongoing. We have relationships with other companies. Um, and when I say relationships, I mean, they're very loose relationships. We don't try or tend to favor one over another. We're not doing a whole lot of co-marketing. I mean, I shouldn't say I don't think we even do any real co-marketing. We may do a webinar or two, but it's more information to bring to a client, right?
Mhm.
A lot of times, as you get into these partnerships, they're like, oh, well, there's rev share, and we'll send you business, and I'm like, that's not really important to
Right.
us. That doesn't move our needle in the grand scheme of things, right?
Right.
So what we want to do is make sure that we have companies that we feel comfortable with, first and foremost, right? We've had partnerships that we start hearing things from, clients are like, hey, we're not getting this, or we're not getting that, or this isn't good to work with, and we kind of shut it down a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, we're not going to send somebody over here when they don't get treated the same way that they would over here. It needs to be the same sort of culture and
Yeah, they
you
need
know,
to share your values.
correct, absolutely.
Yeah.
But so AP automation, again, it's a big one. What else? We have material procurement is particularly common these days because it's a difficult process. We have the ability to do purchase orders in our software, and we can track receiving against those purchase orders, and we can track the billing against those receipts.
Mhm.
But it's not out in the field, and it's not difficult, but it's a lot of work, and
Yeah.
it puts a lot of that work on people who don't really know. Like,
Right.
they weren't in the field, so until they get the receiving slips into the office, they don't know they got it.
Right.
Right? The matching up of the invoice, it's fine, it works. But um, you know, these applications that are out there these days, they make a little bit lighter work of it,
Yeah.
because the guys in the field are the ones who can issue these POs as they need them. Obviously, you can still work with purchasing in office depending on the extent of what they're ordering, but um, they automatically have relationships with a lot of these key vendors, so those invoices come in right through EDI, I guess, and there's some automatic matching of the receiving to the PO, making sure the invoicing matches the receiving, and then those invoices just can get pushed over to the accounting software. So it's pretty good. There are companies that dealing with equipment maintenance and tracking, right? So a fair amount of our contractors, deal with heavy equipment. So separating out like the mechanical, right? Not the rooftop units and things like that, because those aren't really their pieces of equipment.
Right.
More specifically talking about the dozers, the excavators, the fleets of trucks, tracking, utilization, maintenance, repairs, things like that. We have an equipment module, right? Companies used to be able to do that all through our software, and that's how it would work. But again, it's all being run by the people in the office here. So they're creating these these field applications that can handle this and really just have certain bits of information that need to come into the software. So that's kind of the trend. Um, Analytics is a big piece. There's a particular partner of ours that can easily connect into a client's database and pull out anything that they want. They have a whole canned group of reports already in a sort of dashboard type thing, but it's customizable. They can do a ton of things with it. And it's things that, I always say, because people will be like, well, I need to do cash flow projections. I need to do projections and things like that. I'm like, you realize you're dealing with an accounting system. We
Right.
look at what happened. We don't predict what's going to happen,
Right.
right? And that is where like these types of applications can come in and really, just supercharge the database that you have with all of the information you've collected.
Yeah.
Even just looking at, hey, you've done 10 jobs for this customer. You've sent out, 75 invoices for
Yeah.
them. The average amount of time it takes them to pay those invoices is 63 days. So
Yeah.
you can say, hey, if you just get $1.5 million contract with them and you spread that out over a 12-month period, and here's your average billing, here's what you can predict out your cash flow fee. So these things just do it, and they do it very easy.
Yeah.
And those are the types of companies that we look to work with that make that easy for customers.
Yeah. I love that. I was actually thinking we've recently encountered a company very similar to that, and they can pull in databases not only from your data, but other databases as well, and then kind of, make that an even more useful application. Some
Sure.
of the things that they're pulling in is even like weather predictions to say like,
Yeah.
okay, what if you're going to have this many down days because of weather and that kind of thing. So it's
Yeah.
amazing what some of those applications can do
Yeah.
these days.
They can even pull in from other software packages, like if you have a CRM system where you're tracking the lead from the bid to negotiations to the awarding,
Right.
even pulling in information from your estimating, and can really merge data from multiple systems and kind of see things from start to finish. It's
Yeah.
really powerful.
Yeah,
Really
and that kind of thing, I know the outsourced CFO that is on our team that we work with all the time, that's the kind of stuff he can really sink his teeth into and
Yeah.
really, and those internal CFOs, I'm sure, for your customers, that's the kind of stuff that they really want to see, okay, how can we move the business forward, with all of that data coming from all those different sources.
Yeah. That kind of leads back to your original question on the job costing. You had mentioned WIP reporting,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
In our system, we kind of refer to it as over under billing, right? So we do have the capability to do it, right? As long as your contract and estimated cost values are updated, all your costs are in the system. It's great. You run a report at the end of the month. Yep, here's where you're at compared to your contract WIP. Here's your percentage complete. Here's your earned revenue, and so on. So it's great. But one of the other things that most clients that I visited in those 15 plus years that I was traveling the country working with clients is nobody ever has a solid handle on the various types of overhead that affect their business, right? They're like, oh yeah, our admins and what it takes to run our office, but all of the shop related things, right? Just miscellaneous fuel and supplies and whatever sit in the warehouse and fixing trucks, and like they lose sight of that.
yes.
And as part of what I did with these companies is we kind of really set up their financial process to capture those dollars. And even if they just know what it looks like from a financial perspective and don't do anything with it, or they take it to the next level and say, okay, now that we know what our running rates are, we're going to somehow allocate that to our projects. We're going to include it in our bidding, and we're going to then allocate it to our jobs based on actuals. So now we can see, when you narrow down the true cost to do the job, right? That gives you the ability to sharpen your pencil on these bids. When times are tough, you can, I can still go in here and I'm going to make money, as opposed to if I bid it this low, I might lose. But also when times are good, where you have some room to fatten things up a little.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
That's one of my favorite things to help clients do is kind of assess exactly what you're talking about. And it's amazing when you really start to dig in with them and ask them, it's just about asking the right questions. And we start to ask them, well, here, for instance, I'm in Arizona. And so our jobs, our crews, we do not have a client in Arizona that doesn't just automatically have one of their crew members go out and get ice and water every morning.
Right. What does that cost?
It's a necessity, yeah. But is that being tracked? And are we thinking about that as a job cost? You know,
Right.
it's an interesting thing when you start to dig in. Or small tool loss. How many times have your guys left a pair of pliers on the job
Yeah.
site, walked away, and it's gone, right? Like,
Yep.
how many small tools are you buying? Right? Those little things that you don't really think about as the business owner, because you just know that it's happening,
Yeah.
and you know that you have to replace that pair of pliers. But if you're not counting that cost and putting something back into your jobs to account for that, yes, you're exactly right. We could be losing money and not even really know where we're
Yeah.
losing.
Yeah. I mean, when every job cost report shows that every job's making money, and at the end of the year, you're in the red.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, those office salaries are too high.
Yeah.
No, how about we focus on not losing our tools?
Right.
Right. You know,
How are we incentivizing that? And how are we training on that? You know, how are
right.
we talking to the employees about, you know, what this is costing the company and the importance of not leaving the pliers behind?
Which is full circle to another niche application that's available for small tool tracking, right? Just to be able to say, you've got an inventory of small tools that are going out to a project, whether it's assigned to an individual or assigned to a project in a tool chest or whatever. We know we had it when the job started.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And when the job's done, what's coming back?
Yeah.
For sure.
One of the things I think is really has been an interesting journey for our team, and some things that we're helping to talk to our clients about in this subject is, it's great to track it, but then what are you going to do with that data, right? And so I think this is really important conversation to have around, like, what are you tracking? And it's great to have all these tools to help you track it. But then how do you push that back down from a management level? So this is some interesting conversations, not necessarily about foundation software, but I love to get into those conversations around, like, you know, the training of employees. I think there are so many small businesses or that mid-market kind of business that you and I are really serving, that are so focused on the work,
Yeah.
and they're maybe even tracking this data, but they don't really know how to translate that data back into better employee training and helping their employees really own that information.
Right. Yeah, and that's interesting you bring that up, because that's talking about tracking things on the detail perspective and pushing that down. But I recently talked to a prospect, right? One of our sales reps was talking to this prospect, and they started getting into like the procurement side of things. And so they wanted some information on what some of their options might be that would work with our software if they went this direction. And it's funny, as an electrical contractor, we're talking about the ability to issue those detailed POs, what's being received and what's being billed. And she's like, I want nothing to do with that.
Yep.
It doesn't matter. We know when we're doing these jobs what the materials are that are needed.
Yeah.
And we have solid pricing. The dollars that we're going to spend chasing that detail far outweigh the dollars we're going to save by using a system like this.
Right.
When we issue the PO, we're going to send them this blanket PO. These are the things we're going to need. We're going to call for these things in certain releases, and that's it. We don't need to know that they came in, and we don't need to know that we're getting billed for those accordingly, because if it didn't come in, we can't do the job.
Right.
If we have too much left over, we're going to know we were overshipped.
Right.
And if we come in over cost, we can look at, is there a ton of stuff left on the project?
Right.
Is that where the cost is at? Or, then maybe the pricing is wrong. But, a lot of these vendors, they don't want to overbill.
Right.
Because it's really easy to go find someone else to provide the same stuff.
Supplier. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have it's interesting you're talking about that. We have a plumbing client at the Profit Constructors who was in a very similar situation. They go out a lot of times on their new construction projects, then we'll get quotes for each project individually. So they may be getting different pricing on certain individual parts for every project, because they're going to get that quoted at the beginning. And the owner of the company came to me and said, I'm really positive that we're getting overbilled on quite a few of these jobs, because some of those parts are being picked and it's not going out according to the quote that we got at the beginning of the job. I think you're probably right on that. I don't doubt that could be happening. But it's important to kind of take into stock, like, what is the level of analyzation that we do need, right? And so we had enough data on hand we did like a quick, I think, 3-month audit, and kind of understood probably what they were losing in a year.
Mhm.
And then we went back and said, okay, what would, because her initial solution was, let's just go ahead and hire a purchasing agent. That'll be our whole job, is to make sure we're not getting overcharged.
Sure.
We did the analysis and took a look at it and said, this is what we think you're probably losing over the course of a year. And it's not enough to pay for that person's salary.
Correct.
Right?
Let alone benefits and everything else to go along with it.
Right, exactly. And so, I think it is good to have a certain level of detail and be able to understand what do we need to analyze. But yeah, it's sort of a balancing act to determine as an owner, what do I need to track and what do I not need to track and why?
Right. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and every business is going to be different depending on their business model, their customers, their employees. And so it's great to have different options as that.
For sure.
Yeah. What do you guys see as some long-term goals for Foundation? What's happening now? How are you guys looking ahead to the future? Speak as
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, obviously growth is certainly imperative. We recently rolled out one of the products in our HQ suite of products is HR HQ, right? So with all of this payroll capability that we have, one thing we never had was the ability to manage the people coming in.
Yeah.
And so that's a big focus right now. Like I said, it's recently rolled out, I think probably March of this past year. And of course, with any new release, right, you think you got it all. And even for the limited things that you're going to be rolling out. And you get it out now in the hands of the masses and you realize everything you don't know, right? So that's a key point there is, we've got this product out there. It needs to really be built more. There's a lot of feedback and a lot of action items that need to be addressed, as well as product enhancements, right? So we'll handle the applicants once they are coming in, but we don't track the applicants, right? So that's another piece that is pretty important, I think. Not sure where that's at on the roadmap, but that's a big piece. Fintech is another big piece in the market today. Our clients spend a lot of money and they receive a lot of money. And, historically, it's been mostly on paper. And that's a really labor-intensive way to make payments and receive payments.
Yes.
And there's a lot of fraud risk these days. I've talked to numerous clients recently who have had checks go missing from the mail. They get whitewashed and they clear. And yes, they have fraud protection. The bank's looking into it. They're not necessarily going to be responsible for those dollars. They're not going to lose those dollars, but those dollars are tied up for months during the investigation. Meanwhile, the contractor they're paying or the supplier they're paying expects to be paid. So if I'm sending out, $80,000 check, and now I've got to send out another one, I'm out 160 grand while this thing is being researched. Great, I'll get it back, but now I'm digging into a line of credit and so on and so forth. So it's a big mess.
And to top that off, someone's going to lose those dollars, and that's going to cost everyone across the board. Because if the bank has to eat that, that doesn't mean that the money just came from nowhere.
Correct. Right. No, absolutely. So there are companies that offer payment services, right? And they actively pursue vendors to accept virtual card. That's going to be the easiest and fastest way. Comes at a cost, of course, but is it worth 2% to have your money today versus having it in 15, 30, 45 days?
Right.
Cash flow is obviously very, very important. There's obviously then they could also do ACH. If the vendor says absolutely not, well, how about ACH? Great, we'll get you set up and that's how we'll pay you from this point forward, and at least then it's electronic. But these companies assume all of the responsibility as well. So all I have to do is send you the information of who I want paid, for which invoices, how much, and some other information, and it's out of my hands.
Right.
And
I'm not collecting ACH data. I'm not keeping that on file. I'm not encouraging.
Right. I don't want the PCI compliance risks, right?
Right.
So so these services are great. Again, on the receivable side, we actually just partnered recently with a company that does processing of cards. And I've learned more in the last 18 months about credit card processing and the fees on the different cards and the banks and the interchange and the rail system than I ever thought I would care to learn. It's very interesting and it's ridiculous, but it's interesting for sure. And so we've just added the ability for our clients to allow their customers to pay their bills electronically online.
Yes.
It goes right into the software. They don't have to touch it. They just get a notification, hey, you got money.
Yep.
And it's great. And so just trying to help these clients speed their cash flow process.
Yeah, I think that's a great initiative that you guys are doing. I think that's a great next step. For sure, we work with a larger fintech company, and they're making some concessions for us in terms of there still being a lot of paper checks that are flying back and forth
Yeah.
between companies. But really, when we first approached them on that, they were like, "But why? Why
Right.
would these companies even want to continue that practice? Our bank really doesn't want to." And they laid out a lot of the reasons why they didn't want to
Yeah.
continue with paper checks. And not a lot of it had to do with convenience. Like you're talking about, most of it had to do with fraud
Yeah.
and fraud protection.
No, absolutely. I mean, the convenience is great. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't have to print, sign, and stuff checks and then stamp them through the machine and then take them to the mail.
Right.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of these companies said that the average cost to cut a check and get it out the door and in someone's hands is between $7 and $8.
Yes. Yeah.
That's mind numbing with the
Yeah.
number of checks these companies cut each and every week.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
So that's a really great next step in the, especially for I think this industry. I really feel like there's a big watershed coming of a lot of technological change. I think the construction industry has been
yeah.
behind, but I think there's a lot more newer, younger folks entering the industry that are excited for that kind of thing.
Isn't it funny? These construction companies, right? If it's a tool, if it's a piece of equipment, if it's something, new and flashy and it's out in the field related, they're the first ones to get all over it, right?
Yes.
If it's a piece of software, like,
Yeah.
it's the back office is going to take care of it. It doesn't affect us.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's changing. It's changing a
Yeah.
lot, particularly in the last probably 5 to 7 years. I think like
Yes.
they really realized that the back office is not equally responsible for the profits, but there's a lot of money lost in the back office when things aren't done right.
Yes, I agree. And the other piece of that too is that especially since COVID, we have a far more mobile ready workforce.
Yeah,
Back office doesn't necessarily have to be anywhere near a real office.
yeah, no. I mean, if you're using a full payments automation process
Yeah.
and you're outsourcing your payroll,
Yeah.
our payroll service doesn't, there's no check printing, direct depositing, or anything. I mean, you literally review the time cards, make sure everything looks good. They are responsible for all the computations. Like they can review everything prior to hitting that button to submit it.
Yeah.
Make sure that everyone's hours look good. The pay rates look good. I mean, proof it however you need to.
Right.
And then hand it off. We take care of the check printing for those that still get checks. I think that is still a thing.
Yeah.
We do all the direct deposits. We do all of the tax reportings for states and locals, the federals.
Yeah.
We do some of the garnishments.
And you were
All
talking
of
about
the
earlier certified payroll, which is huge.
Well, yeah, but even then, now we don't do the certified reports as in send them,
Right.
but the reports can be generated out of the software, regardless of whether they're accounting software users or just the payroll service. The financial impact, let's say it's a QuickBooks user that uses our payroll service, right? Because sometimes that makes sense, right? I'm a QuickBooks user. I don't have enough revenue. I'm not big enough yet to move into your accounting software, but I'm starting to get these public jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how to do the certified reports. I'm not sure how that works. So you come to our payroll service and we basically get you set up on the ledger, job cost, and payroll side of our software.
Yeah.
Which is great because you get your job cost and reports, at least that are impacted by the payroll, which includes all of your taxes and benefits, any of the burden that goes along with it. You get your financial reporting that you can just take out and dump into QuickBooks. And then obviously you get your certified reports, right? You get your workers' comp reports, things like that. And when they're ready to look at another more sophisticated accounting application,
Yeah.
the hardest part of their implementation is already done.
Right.
to go to foundation to just get their payables and receivables loaded up and end up beginning balances and actually start doing the full gamut of accounting through our software,
Right.
it's such an easy flow. So it's a great way to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just can't emphasize it enough. So for many, many years, our team has said, no, we just don't even do certified payroll because there are so many parts and pieces, information and data coming from different areas. It's just not something that we ever really want to get into. And so to be able to pull those reports down with a minimum of effort, I think is an invaluable piece of what you guys are doing on that payroll for construction.
Yeah. And one of the things that people, a lot of times they don't want to get into it because they're like, oh, it's so expensive. We can't afford to pay our guys like that. I'm like, but you already offer medical insurance. You already offer pay time off. You have a match on your 401k. You have a lot of the things that are already built into that prevailing wage fringe benefit amount.
Right.
Did you know that you can reduce what you're paying in that cash fringe benefit by what you already provide? You just have to have means to report it.
Right.
And as long as you can do that, it's not that much more. Obviously, whatever the pay rates are different between your public jobs versus your private jobs, fine. But if you know what you really need and you know that you can reduce this, you can bid competitively and you can get this work, and it can be profitable.
Yes, absolutely. We have a mechanical client that's exactly how they got their start. They're a small woman-owned business, and it just made so much sense for them to go into those public jobs.
Sure.
Now they do a lot more private jobs, but when they first started up, public was the way to go for them, and they did really well with that for a long time. So
Yeah, a lot of people are just afraid to get into the unknown,
yes,
honestly, and there are a lot of resources out there to help you with that, and I didn't know, as I started working with clients. I mean, honestly, my degree is in communications.
yeah,
Right. I figured I'd be in advertising, public relations, or something like that. And here I am, 20 some years later in construction accounting. And it's like everything that I learned from the clients or having to figure out because they needed something.
yes,
And now I need to figure this out for them. And getting into that public space and having to get more familiar with, here are your reporting requirements. Here's what you're gonna have to do. Here's where you're gonna go. The job has all of the rates and everything defined. If you are not a union contractor, but you're going to bid this job, here are the rates you're going to have to pay if you're doing these particular activities.
right,
And a lot of people just don't know it, and so
right.
we just stay away from it, and you're losing a whole lot of potential work.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. What would you say before we kind of wrap this up? What would be the one big piece of advice that you would give to anyone that's kind of looking around and saying, okay, is foundation right for me? How would someone really know that foundation is the choice, what they should pick for their accounting software?
Yeah, I mean, due diligence, right? I mean, you've got to look at all of the options, right? Um, one of our strengths now is that it's not just the accounting system that we have, right? We have the payroll service. So if you want to outsource, you don't need an ADP, Paychecks, Paylocity, whatever. You can get it all right through Foundation. You need an estimating system, right? One of these might work for you, right? If not, we can take an estimate file and just bring it right into the software. It's not hard. What about timekeeping, right? How do you collect things mobily? Are you doing manual timesheets? We can help with that, and we can automate how that flows into the software. So, you're not just buying an accounting system, because there are other things that you will need to create an all-encompassing solution. The other thing is to truly get a feel for the company, right? Talk to other users.
Yeah.
Look at some of the message boards that are out there, right? I mean, we don't have a 94% retention rate because we're not responsive and we don't listen and we don't help.
Yeah.
Right. So that's extremely important as well. And be diligent in your demo process. Make sure you ask good questions. One of the things, there's always, and this is like a lot of times the consultants won't make good salespeople, because if you ask me, do you have this capability? And I'm in sales, I say yes.
Yes.
if I'm in consulting, I'm like, well, we do, but how do you do this? Because this is what it takes to do it over here, right?
Right.
So you really want to be comfortable that you've seen what you need to work.
Yes.
And also, I think taking competitors' comments with a grain of salt,
Yeah.
right? Um, we've had run-ins with other companies, who shall remain nameless, like
Yes.
Voldemort. Um, you know, sales is tough, right?
Mhm.
So I think we try to sell on merits of the
Mhm.
software and what it's going to do and how we're going to take care of you, as opposed to putting down another application. If you're talking to other people that are putting down and saying things, they could be right. Talk to us. Say, hey, we were talking to another company. They said you can't do this, or the way you do it is really, difficult or whatever. Ask that question. Don't just take it at face value because everybody's trying to sell.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point. And I also want to bring it back around to something that we chatted about earlier, which is I like that you guys kind of know your lane, right? So you were
Yeah,
saying like some of the larger GCs, that's not a great fit. Just
yeah,
depending on each individual situation, it might not be the very best software. And I think that's really important from the standpoint of what you were talking about earlier, your culture and your values, to know that and from your sales team to be seeking that out and making sure that you guys are selling to the people that are really going to get the most use out of the software that you're selling.
yeah, absolutely. Because the reputation is what we have really been selling on for 30 years,
Yeah.
right? Is that these companies come on and we can scale. You can come from a $5 million startup and you're doing 50, 100 million now.
Yeah.
And our software handles it just fine.
Right.
There's very little difference other than now we're going to want to get some more detailed financials. How are we doing? Maybe we divisionalize and see what sectors of our business are doing better over the others. But it's very scalable. And that's the other thing really to look at is how do these other software packages scale?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Good point.
And one other piece is make sure the users are involved in the analysis,
Yes.
because a lot of times you get executives that make these decisions and they say, hey, this is the route we're going. And you get the implementation people going and they're like, well, this is how we did it over here and this is how we're going to do it. And like, no. We're
Yeah.
buying this because we want to do things differently.
Right.
Listen, if you do go this route, listen to the implementation team, because they're making recommendations based on how things should go, not how things have gone.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
important.
Great point. Yeah. And sometimes, change is hard.
Sure.
Nobody loves change. But there are many times when change is necessary if we're going to come to the next level of growth and scale for our business.
Yeah.
It's really
Very
important
much.
to
Very much so.
understand when is it necessary and what are the reasons. Again, that goes back to that whole training thing we were talking about earlier. I think it's super important if you are management pushing this initiative, like, okay, we're
Yeah.
going to go make this big move to foundation, letting them know it's not going to be easy, but also having the conversations with everyone in the office, like, what are the reasons that we're doing this? And then
Right.
if everyone can get on board with what those reasons are, it's going to make that transition and that implementation so much more effective.
No, absolutely. And that couldn't be said any better. If you guys aren't all on the same page, right? Like, look, this is what's happening. It's going to suck for the next 3 to 5 months
Right.
because it just is. It's accounting. You never want to change your accounting system.
Right.
But this is the goal. These are some of the things that we're looking to work on, and we're hoping to streamline these processes. So
Right.
we need you on board. And if you're not on board, we kind of need you to tell us.
Yeah.
It may be time to part ways.
And sometimes I think it's super effective to even ask them, what did you not like, right? Because if you can find the right ways, the things that they were unhappy about in the old method,
Yeah,
and help them find how that new method's going to improve, then they can really own that and get on
yeah,
board and be
absolutely,
solid in that process. So
absolutely. Yep,
I love
no,
it.
it's good.
Thank you so much, Brian, for having this conversation with us today. If someone wants to know more about Foundation, how can they reach out to your sales team and where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, they can get onto our website, foundationsoft.com, and pretty much anything they need is there. There's contact us, see more, demo. All of those go right into our intake department. Again, it goes right into our inside sales to do a soft qualification. What are you looking for? Is it a good fit? All right, we'll get you set up for a demo. What works for you? If you're already a client and you need information on some additional products, all of the products are listed out on the webpage as well. You know, there's no shortage of means by which to get in touch.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you, Brian. Have a great rest of your week. Good talking to you.
Thanks, Tonya. Appreciate it.
If you would like to share your company or product on the Construction Junction, email hello@theprofitconstructors.com to become a sponsor.